Join me in making this adorable pumpkin ornament and oil diffuser. Check out the list of materials below. Just click on Show More, gather everything you need, and we'll get started. I have my bead mat set up here, my bead on it board, set up here with my felt pumpkin and my little wood form here that goes on top of it. Also have a variety of Czech glass beads. I have some seed beads. I also have a button and a crystal here, just a couple larger items to add some variety and texture to my pumpkin. I also have some glue that I'm going to use, and of course a needle and thread because I'll be gluing and sewing some beads onto my felt. First thing I'm going to do here is remove the coating that is on the pumpkin. So whenever you get a laser cut form, you're going to have to remove the protective coating. There's a thin layer of paper that's on one side, and that's to help protect it when it's getting cut by the laser, and then just protect it from getting dirty if there's from anything else. So here you can see I have the wood or the paper that I took off. You're just going to take your needle, just get it under the edge of that paper and pull that off. There's also a little insert here that shows that. So you're going to take that coating off, and then we're going to affix the pumpkin, the wood pumpkin, to the felt. I'm going to use a little E6000 here, and I don't need to use much. I'm going to just put a little of my glue on the wood, and you can tell that there's a back and a front to the wood. There's two different sides. One side is going to be lighter. That's the side that's been under the paper. And the other side is going to be darker. That's the side that was not under the paper. And now you can really put either side up, but I'm going to put the lighter side up. So once I have some glue on here, I'm going to just line that up, give it a little press. And you don't really need much glue because we'll also be sewing these pieces together, but putting some glue on here is going to help to keep it together while we're working on it, so we don't have to try to hold these two pieces together while we're also sewing other pieces onto it. So just give that a minute to dry. And while that's drying, you're going to take a look at some of the beads you have and decide where you want to put things. So I have a nice little variety of orange colors, and I also have some darker beads here that are like a purple iris gold or a mixed sort of metallic look here. And this will give me a variety of golds and oranges and deeper colors. I also have some orange Czech glass beads. I also have crystals here. So really anything that is going to be in that color range that you want. I have a nice big crystal here. And I just think this cup button is really fun and give it kind of a crafty kind of look. So I'm going to go with that. I want generally the colors to be lighter at the top and towards the center of my sections. That'll just give it a little bit more of a realistic look. And I want it to be darker towards the bottom and towards the edge, right around the wood here. That'll give it just a little bit more of like a natural shading appearance. So my light crystal here, I'm going to put towards the top. I might move that over here. Play around with it and see what I like. And I like my big orange button here kind of towards the center. So like I said, just let this rest and dry for a minute. Play around with some of your beads. You want a bunch of different colors. Get an idea of where you want things. And then you can start applying and affixing either through some glue or thread or both, and making this into a fun little patchwork of beads. Once you have your wood piece glued onto your felt, we're going to start playing around with adding some beads in these different sections. I know that I want to put my crystal up here, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of glue to the back of that. So I've got a little bit of glue here, and I've used the E6000. You don't need very much at all. So you can see here just a tiny little bit, And when I put that down, that will hold it. I'm going to be moving it around a little bit because I'm going to still be sewing it. So it'll get knocked around a little bit. But if I put that glue on there first, it'll help to hold it down there even after I have it sewn on. So just to keep it a little bit more secure. So I've got my needle and thread here. And I'm going to come up with my needle through the back, from the back to the front, just close to one of those holes in my crystal. Pull your thread through, leaving a little bit of a tail on the back, because we're going to tie that in a minute here to hold our thread ends together. So I'm going to take my needle and thread and go through the hole in the crystal. And we're going to have to lift that up a little bit, and that's fine. We're going to pull that pull that thread through and go down the other side of our crystal through the felt. And now here on the back, I have that thread end. So I'm going to make a little knot here and tie the two ends together. Tie the thread that I'm working with around the end. And I'm going to do that twice so I get a nice little knot there that's not going to come undone. And now I'm going to go to the other hole of my crystal here and just come up through the back of the felt and go through the hole in my crystal. And down the other side here. So now I have that thread holding that crystal on. I also have the glue under there. So between the thread and the glue, I don't think that crystal is going anywhere. The really nice thing about E6000 is that if you do get a little glue someplace where you don't want it, it comes off very easily. And if you get a little bit smudged on the felt, your needle will usually poke through that E6000 really easily. So you don't have to worry about the felt becoming too hard and stiff, and you won't be able to work with it. So the E6000 is a really good choice for this kind of work. So I went ahead and put my light color crystal there because I want my colors to kind of flow from dark to light. So I want lighter colors here at the top and some darker colors at the bottom. So that'll give me a nice kind of natural shadow and shading. I also want the center of my sections here to be a little lighter and brighter, and the edges of my sections to be a little bit darker. If you want to look up some pictures of pumpkins, that'll also give you an idea of how to arrange your colors. So my crystal here is a much lighter color, so I'm going to put that towards the top. Now, it's just going to be a matter of deciding where you want your other beads to go and how you want to fill this in. I love these little round beads here because they've got a nice little variety of colors in them. This is one of those purple iris gold or ancient gold, one of those colors that has that kind of like variety of finishes in it. I'm going to use these little beads here to sort of outline this section. So I'm going to come up through my felt about where I want the beads to start. So I'm going to start here under my crystal, and I'm going to pick up my lighter color beads here on purpose so that I get a lighter color next to my lighter color crystal. And I'm only going to pick up 2 beads. You can pick up more or less, or just 1 bead if you want. I'm going to pick up 2 beads here, take my needle and thread, and I'm going to go down, straight down through my felt right at the end of those beads. And now I'm going to come up through the felt behind those beads, pass through them, and now I'm in position here to add another couple beads. So I'm going to pick up another couple beads here, and I'm going to gradually get some darker beads in here to kind of work on that shading. So start it with lighter ones, and then I'm going to start adding some darker ones in. And again, I'm going to take my needle and thread and go straight down through the felt at the end of those beads, right past that hole in the bead. I'm going to come up through the beads, or sorry, through the felt at the right next to the first bead that I picked up in that little set of two. And then I'm going to go forward in my beads here and come out the end. Since you've got this wood form around here, it is going to help you to have a pair of pliers around. So if you want to just kind of pick your needle up, if it gets stuck on the wood in here, that'll help you kind of get that needle unstuck. So I'm going to go through those beads, and I'm going to continue here, just picking up some darker, more orangey color beads and work my way into some of the darker and maybe purpley color beads that I have here. So I'm going to go ahead and continue this outline and then show you how I incorporate some of the other fun colors and shapes I have here. I now have these rounds secure and on my pumpkin. And you can see my stitches here are pretty neat, but they're not perfect. So we're not going to worry too much about what the stitches look like on the back, because we are going to cover that later. So here I have my threaded needle here coming out the bottom. So I'm going to start from the bottom and work towards the top in this section here. And I'm just going to fill in on the felt here with a variety of beads that I have that are the right size, the right kind of shape that fit together, and really just kind of treat this like a mosaic. So I think what I'm going to do here is, because I have these nice dark rich orange rounds, I'm going to pick some of those guys up, and you can apply them in a couple of different ways. You can either use the technique that we were using to add these rounds, which is like a back stitch where you're picking up some beads, going back through those beads and then adding more, or you can simply come out through your felt, pick up a bead and go back down through your felt. You're just going to give yourself some space for that bead. So you're going to come up, down through the felt about the distance of the bead away from your first puncture here where your thread came up, and just add the bead that way by itself. And if you do this, you'll get a little bit more of a variety in the way that your beads are sitting, so it looks a little bit more like a mosaic. And I'm going to just continue here, picking up one bead at a time and inserting it here so it looks a little bit like a mosaic. The other thing you can do is you can pick up a bead and then pick up a seed bead and then back down through the same hole in the bead. So I'll show you that too here in a minute. Here I'm just continuing to add beads one at a time. If you want to create a nice solid line, then you want to use the back stitch method. If you want it to look a little bit more random, more like a mosaic, then you just simply need to pick up the beads one at a time, like what I'm doing here. Now, if I want to start getting into some different colors and I want to start adding a different bead, say I can fit that bead in here. So this is a rondelle, it's kind of flat. So this is a good place to show you the other option for adding beads. I'm going to come up through the felt about where I want the hole in my bead to be. And then I'm going to pick up my bead and just let that fall down to the felt. I'm going to pick up a seed bead, and then I'm going to go back down through the bead and come back down through the felt in about the same place that I originally came up through the felt. So I'm going up and down through the same hole in the bead and just securing it on there with a seed bead. So if you do that, you'll have a little seed bead on the top there, which will be a little bit of texture and some added color, which is nice. And then you can also continue to add these one at a time, and that gives you a little bit more texture, variety, and again, looks a little bit more like a mosaic. So I need a bead in here. Wherever I see felt, I can just come back and add a bead. And again, you can add the beads using any of these techniques where we do a back stitch. We come up through the felt and add one bead at a time. We can hold it on with a little seed bead going up and down through the same hole. Really, it just depends on the bead and what you want that part of your design to look like. So I'm going to continue here adding more beads, remembering to keep darker beads at the bottom, some lighter beads at the top here, and just kind of playing and having fun with it. And again, don't worry too much about what the back looks like because we are going to cover that up later. I have my one section finished now, and you can see here that I have my lighter beads at the top and my darker beads here at the bottom. And I've just added them in a nice little mosaic, grouping some of my beads together. And in these really tiny spots where you can't really fit much, I'm just adding seed beads in there. So I have a nice little mosaic of different colors, different shapes, different textures, and this will all kind of blend together to make a nice sort of harmonious little mosaic in each one of my sections. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to my next section. And wherever your thread and needle is coming out on the back, we're just going to hop over to our next section here. And I'm going to start by picking up, again, like my lighter beads here at the top. So this should fit in here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick one of these up and lay that down in there and go back through my felt. And now if you run into issues where you've got little corners here that you can't fit something in, this is the perfect place to pick up a seed bead or two. You can always pick up one or two at a time and continue to fill that in as you need to. Those seed beads are going to be the perfect little bead to fill in any little areas that you can't really fit anything else. And you can always come back and fill in those areas when you're done. You don't have to do it as you go. Put in your big beads and then you can fill in afterwards with the seed beads if you'd like to do it that way. So I'm going to continue here and continue with, again, just doing light to dark and see what this looks like when I'm done. I have my second section here done. I'm going to start working on the center. I want to put this table cut button in here. So I'm going to just position it where I want it. And I want to put it to the side here. And then as far as color, it's sort of in the middle. So I'm going to put it somewhere in the middle here so that it fits in color-wise with this gradient, with this light to dark that I have. And because it's a button, I'm just going to put it down here and come up through the felt about where one of those holes is. Get my needle through the hole there. And I'll pick up some seed beads. And then I'll go back down through the other hole and get that button securely on there. And then I'm going to do this again, come up through that same hole and then through the seed beads, and you can go through the seed beads all at once or one or two at a time, and then through the other hole. So just kind of like sewing a button here onto a pair of pants. Just going to go through those holes and secure that. And now that I've got that big sort of piece in there that I'm going to work around, I can then start working on the bottom and work to the top, or I can work around the button and go outwards. Kind of however you want to work on the mosaic is fine, as long as you, again, just stick to that light to dark so everything looks like it belongs on the pumpkin. So it looks like a real pumpkin, as much as a real pumpkin as this is going to look like. So we're going to have some fun now playing with the center here and working on that. I now have all of the beaded sections of my pumpkin done, and I also brought in some green for the stem there at the top. I also have in my little kit, I have these little charms, these wood charms that hang below the pumpkin. So you can either use these as little charms that hang below, or if you want to use them individually, that's of course fine as well. I'm going to show you how I like to make little like charms that I can then hang underneath the pumpkin and attach it so that they kind of move freely like a little wind chime. The first thing I want to do is look at how I want to arrange my pieces. I have 4 of them here. I have a little acorn, a sunflower, a pine cone, and I have a leaf. So you just want to take a look at them, arrange them. You can either have them hang at little angles, or you can have them just be really random. I want to put this sunflower down at the bottom since it's the biggest one, and I'll do something like this so it's kind of balanced. So once you know about where you want them to hang and how you want them to, how to be arranged, we're going to just move this off to the side in that same order so that I know where I wanted to put them. But then I'm going to work on it here in the center, so I'll just put those off to the side. Here again is my pumpkin. And my first piece here, I'm going to hang this down the center, and I want it to hang about 1 inch or so down. First thing I'm going to do is add a loop to the top of this, and then I'll make a beaded little section that will then connect to my pumpkin. I have a piece of thread and a needle here, and I'm going to pick up a number of 11/0 seed beads, just long enough to make a loop around the top of my pine cone here. So I'm not even counting my seed beads. I'm just picking up, I'm just sort of eyeballing it and seeing what looks like it's going to go around here. I want about 1 inch, but really a little bit less than 1 inch is what'll work for me. I also have the end of my thread here. You can put on a stop bead if you want. I'm just going to hold it here and then tie it together once I have my beads on here. So I'm going to try out this length here. It's a little bit less than 1 inch. Take your needle through the hole at the top of your acorn, and then take your needle and thread back through your 11/0 seed beads. And that looks just about where I want it. Loose enough that my charm can move freely, but not too big. I'm going to take my needle and thread and continue through my seed beads until I meet up with my tail thread. And now when I've got my 2 threads together here, I'm just going to make a little overhand knot to hold this together, and do another one here. And that should hold this while I work. So again, I want to make this to hang about 1 inch or so for my pumpkin. I'm going to take my needle and thread and go through my seed beads until I get to the seed bead at the very center at the top. So just going through these beads until I get to the center here where I want to start making my little design of seed beads and Czech beads that I want to see hanging between my pumpkin and my little acorn here. So I have a variety of beads that I have left over, just any of the smaller beads that you have left over from your pumpkin, plus whatever seed bead color you want. Since I didn't use a lot of the green, I'm going to use some of the green in this section down here on my charms. And that will also kind of give me the look of like a vine. So I've got a little bit less orange, and I'm kind of toning it down with some of my green. Coming out of that 11/0 at the top, I'm now just going to pick up whatever pattern I want in my beads. There's really no right or wrong, but I do like to keep the chunkier beads at the center of my design, and that just helps keep it balanced. Now again, I don't want this one very long. This is going to be the one that's closest to my pumpkin, so I can string some beads here and just hold that up and see if that's about where I want it, and that looks fine to me. And I really like the way that this looks, pulling that little bit of orange in, but keeping most of it green here so that it tones it down a little bit. So here at the top, I'm just going to decide where I actually want to attach it. If I want it right in the center here, I can go ahead right in the center. And I'm going to sew through the felt only on this pumpkin. So I'm going to go through the felt here. I'm going to start at the back, go towards the front. And it's going to be on an angle here because we can't, of course, go through the wood. So I'm just going through the felt here at an angle. Picking up a couple more of my seed beads. And then on the other side here, I'm going to skip a couple of my seed beads. So I always want to have a couple seed beads at the top here. It'll help you to attach it to your felt a little better if you've got a couple seed beads at the top. So I'm going to pick up a couple more seed beads, skip 2 of my seed beads, and then go down through the rest of my beads. So you can see here at the top, and pull this tight. If I have a couple seed beads, then I can have a little branch or a little Y here at the top. So I can have a couple seed beads go to the front and a couple seed beads go to the back of my felt. And that gives me a nicer connection there. Going through my beads. And now when I get to that top center bead in the loop going around my acorn, I'm going to go back through that bead. And I'm going to go through my seed beads, my strung beads here. And I want to go through here again because this is going to be hanging. And I want to reinforce it just so that as it moves, it is less likely to break on me. And again, go through these couple seed beads in the front, go diagonally through my felt, and through my seed beads in the back. And then either here or down by your acorn here, it doesn't really matter where, we're going to tie this off. So I'm going to go through a couple of my beads here. And what I like to do is tie it off a couple different places. I like to take my needle and thread and go around the thread that I already have running through the beads, make a little overhand knot there, give it a pull, go through a couple more beads, and do the same thing. Just go through, go around that thread you already have running through the beads, and go through that little loop to make an overhand knot, and through some more beads. So now at this point, I'm done with my first little dangle or fringe or charm, whatever you want to call it. And I can now cut or burn off that thread. So now what I'm going to do is take the rest of my pieces and I'm going to arrange these again the way that I wanted them. And I'll do the same thing. I'll make loops at the top. I'll make a strung section here to make it the length that I need it. And then I will attach these to my pumpkin here. After that, I'll take a look at the back and put a backing on and think about how I want to hang this. So I'm going to go ahead and move on here with my little pieces here that I want to dangle. And I'll show you what that looks like when I'm done. Here's my completed pumpkin with my little dangles at the bottom here. And you can see I actually made them quite long and I centered them. And I actually joined 2 of them together here. So there's lots of different options for adding your fringe or your dangles down at the bottom here. The next thing I'm going to do is make a loop at the top here so that I can hang this. I'm going to do that again using my needle and thread. And on the back of the pumpkin, I'm going to start on one side of the felt at the very top, and I'm going to go through that one corner of the stem. I'm going to tie a little knot, and I'm going to use my seed beads and again, whatever beads that I have left that are small, to create a little loop at the top here. I'm going to start with my seed beads, and just like we did on the bottom, I'm going to just string a number of beads to make a loop that goes around about as long and as wide as I want it to be. You can create a small loop if you want, and then add something like an ornament hanger, one of those little wire pieces, little S-shaped wire. You can use that, or you can make this beaded section long enough that it'll fit over a doorknob or whatever else you want to hang it on. So I'm going to go ahead here and string some beads, and then I'll connect it on the other side. After stringing your beads, we're going to go to the other side of our felt here on the back, and we're going to go through again at a diagonal and just connect the other end to the top of the stem here. And because we're going to use this loop to hang, we're going to reinforce this. Anytime we've got a string of beads that is going to act as some sort of hanger, or it's going to be, or it's going to have a lot of movement, or any sort of pulling or tugging on it, we want to go ahead and reinforce that and just make that stronger by taking some more thread through. So just go back and forth a couple times here to add some more thread and really get that connection and the beads themselves, the loop, stronger. Once we go through all of these beads, we're just going to tie off our ends and cut or burn it down however you like to do that. I don't have a very long loop here, so I'll probably use something additional when I hang this, depending on where I want to put it. And you can see here, there is my little loop at the top. So now if you make a little loop like this, you can use an additional hanger. Let's say you hang it in a windowsill and you want to add a little piece of string at the top, or you want to add a ribbon or a bow, add a little S-shaped wire piece. Lots of different things that you can do with this. If you keep it a little bit shorter, then you've got lots of options. If you keep it longer, then you also have options. So think about where you want to hang it, and that will help determine how long you need the loop to be. So just tie this off, do a couple of overhand knots, and then I like to bury this here in my felt in the back. And I'm going to cut down any of the threads in the back here that I don't need anymore. I don't need to cut them down super close because I'm going to end up covering this in the back. And so I can put any of my ends towards the center and I can glue them down and really hold them in there. So we don't have to worry about burning down too close to the ends. So here is my little pumpkin, and next I'm going to show you how to put a backing on if you choose to do so. Okay, so adding a backer to your piece. Backer is optional. You can do lots of different things to cover the back. You can paint it if you want to. You can take any kind of piece of fabric and make and cut out a piece and sew it or glue it on here. You can have a fun sort of jack-o'-lantern print if you want on here. Another piece of felt, all kinds of things you can do. But I'm going to show you how I add just a piece of regular backer here. This is for embroidery. It's just a fabric that isn't going to fray. And that's the most important thing that you want. Just something that isn't going to fray, because then it will make it easier for you to cut out and work with, and you don't have to worry about doing a little hem or folding in the edges there to prevent it from fraying. All I'm going to do here is line up my pumpkin close to the edge here, just so that I'm not wasting material. And then you're going to take a pen and just gently outline your piece here. And you want to be careful here that if you're using a pen, you're not getting any marks on your actual piece. You're just using this to outline. And we're going to go ahead and trace the whole thing, getting close without actually touching our piece. And it's a little bit tricky here around some of the fringe, but you're going to just do your best here to kind of get those lines in there, some guidelines. So now once you have that piece drawn, you're just going to use some scissors and cut it out. And we're just going to cut it out so that we are slightly inside of that red line. I have some of my slip and snip scissors, and you can use any sort of scissor that's going to be nice and sharp and give you a nice clean edge. I'm going to use these scissors, and I'm going to start cutting out, and I'm going to cut out cleanly and just inside my red line and go all the way around here. So you can see here, I want to make sure that it's clean, and the red line, or whatever color ink you have, you want to actually have that on the outside. You're cutting that away, and that will make your piece just the right size to fit on the back. After you cut out your pumpkin shape, we're going to glue the backing onto our pumpkin here. So any little straggly ends here, we're going to put a little glue on those and hold those down and push that towards the center of our project here. Put some glue here around the edge. The edge and the very center is going to be the most important here because we don't want to have any of the edge come up. That's where we want to make sure that it's the most neat. So you want to put a little glue on here, spread that out a little bit, get a little bit here in the center so it doesn't come up in the center and form a little pocket. And you're going to take the raw side of your backer, whichever side is the least pretty, and we're going to go ahead and lay this down. You have a little bit of time to work with the glue and push this down and get any pockets of air out of your backer. And if you work from the center out, giving it a little press down, you'll get a nice smooth backing. So at this point, you can either leave it just like this. You can trim a little bit where it's popping over the edge here. With your scissors, just trim it close to the edge here. Cutting it with your scissors beforehand is going to get you really close. But once it's actually on here, you can use some scissors to just give it a nice close trim if there's any places where you didn't quite get it the exact shape that you need it. So you can trim that down even further. So now you can either leave this the way that it is and let this glue dry, or we can also do some stitches in here, which I would recommend just to make sure that the backing here doesn't start to curl up on the edges. So I'll show you how to do that once my glue dries here. The final step that I'm going to take here, the very last thing I'm going to do to finish this pumpkin, is to add a little edging of beads. And I'm going to use that edging to connect my felt and the backer here. And that will seam that up and stop the edges from curling. I have my needle and thread. And I'm just going to pick some place to start here. I'm going to take my needle and thread, and I'm going to go at an angle through the felt, so similar to how we attached our fringe here. And I'm going to tie a tiny little knot just to get this thread anchored on my piece. So I'm going to do a couple little knots here. One won't hold, so you want to do a couple. And that will just make it easier for me to start. I'm going to take my thread end and just tuck it in under my felt, or between my felt and the backer there, to hold that out of my way. This is going to be a brick stitch edging, so if you're familiar with brick stitch, then you probably already know what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue through the backer, so I'm coming out on the back of the project, and I'm going to pick up 2 of my 11-0 seed beads. Actually, I'm going to pick up 3. I'm picking up 3 for this first step. You can do 2. If you do 3 here, you'll make a nice little triangle of beads. So we're going to start out here with 3. And now I'm going to take my needle and thread, and I'm going to move down my project here just about the width of 2 seed beads. And I'm going to go through my felt and through the backer here. And again, I'm going through at a little bit of an angle, because I'm going to have to go through my felt at an angle. I'm going to come up through the bottom of that 3rd seed bead. And as I do that, it should pull my seed bead so that the hole is coming straight out towards me. So my thread is coming out towards me, and the hole is actually sitting going up and down here. I'm going to go through the next seed bead, that center seed bead, and I'm going to go through the first seed bead, through the bottom, from the top through the bottom actually, and now I should be coming out between the 3rd, actually this is the first little seed bead I picked up, between that first seed bead and my felt. I'm going to go through the felt and the backer, again at an angle here. Oops, and I got a little knot here. Of course, it's always at the very end of my project here. So if you do get a knot, please don't just try to pull it out or try to work with it. Take the time to try to pull it out, because it's going to be much better for your project in the long run than if you try to forcefully pull it through your beads. So fortunately I got that knot out and it wasn't hard. So now here I'm on the back, and I'm going to go through that same seed bead from the bottom out through the top. So I'm going away from my pumpkin. And that is my first little triangle or picot trim of seed beads. So this is following a brick stitch pattern, but picking up 3, I'm going to have that center bead stick out. Now I can work in either direction. I'm going to go back through my beads here so that I can work counterclockwise. That's going to be easier for me. So I'm going back through my seed beads, and I'm going again through my felt and the backer at a slight angle. Now with all these little dangles, you want to make sure that you're not getting your thread caught on anything. Go up through my seed bead, so my thread is coming out, going away from my pumpkin. I'm going to start adding beads now, and I'm going to pick up 2 at a time. So I've got 2 of my seed beads on, and I'm going to go through my pumpkin. Now you can either go from the back to the front or the front to the back. I actually find it really helpful to go from the back to the front, because puncturing through the backer first sometimes just gets you in a better position here. It's easier to get your stitches spaced out properly if you start in the back. So I'm going to go over, going to make my stitch about the width of a seed bead away, and again going at an angle through the felt, go up through my seed bead, and pick up another 2 seed beads. And again on the backer here, I'm going to go over about the width of a seed bead, through the backer and the felt, and then up through that seed bead. So if you're not familiar with brick stitch, we also have lots of other videos that you can watch to get some practice in before working on this project. So you can see here that as I do that, I'm going to build a nice little border of color and texture around my pumpkin. I'm going to continue all the way around, just being a little careful as I go around where I have my seed beads attached here at the top and the bottom. And then my pumpkin will be complete. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this and show you when I'm done. Here you have my finished diffuser. So I call it a diffuser because you can use it as an ornament and an oil diffuser. If you have essential oils, all you have to do is put a little drop on the surface here, and the oils will actually be absorbed into the felt, even the wood here, because the wood is porous. So that will hold and trap the oils and let this give off a nice scent. I'd suggest something seasonal, but you can put whatever kind of scent you want on here. Hang this someplace where you want to have a little seasonal charm, and also brighten it up with a little essential oils.